Hello, and welcome to the Time Capsule Podcast. I'm Barbara Beauregard from AncestrySeeking.com, and this podcast is all about helping you discover, protect, and preserve your family history so it can be shared for generations to come. Today, we're going to talk about something that confuses almost everyone when they begin researching their family tree: cousins. More specifically, what does it really mean when someone says they are your second cousin once removed? If you've ever looked at your family tree or received a DNA match and thought, wait, how exactly are we related? You are not alone. Understanding cousin relationships is one of the first things many genealogists struggle with. The terminology can sound complicated, but once you understand the simple logic behind it, it becomes much easier to follow. And when you do understand it, something wonderful happens. Your family tree begins to make much more sense. Today, we're going to walk through the basics together so you can understand how cousin relationships work and why they are so important in genealogy research. So, why does cousin relationships matter in genealogy? When people begin researching their family history, they often focus first on parents, grandparents, and great grandparents. Those are the direct ancestors. But genealogy doesn't stop there. Families grow outward in many directions, and those extended branches include cousins of all kinds. Understanding these relationships becomes especially important when you begin working with your DNA matches, your family trees, historical records, and distant relatives who may share information about your ancestors. In fact, when you receive a DNA match from a testing service like Ancestry or MyHeritage, the predicted relationship will often be something like second cousin, third cousin, or second cousin once removed. So understanding these terms can actually help you figure out where someone might fit in your family tree. Let's start with the easiest relationship to understand: first cousins. First cousins share the same grandparents. That's the key idea. If your parent and another person's parent are siblings, then the children of those siblings are first cousins. For example, imagine two brothers. Each brother has children. Those children are first cousins because they share the same set of grandparents. They are in the same generation, and their connection comes through those shared grandparents. Most people understand this relationship easily because many of us grew up knowing our first cousins. But as we move further back in the family tree, things begin to change. Second cousins. Second cousins share the same great grandparents. This means their grandparents were siblings. So the connection is one generation further back than first cousins. Here is another way to think about it. First cousins share grandparents. Second cousins share great grandparents. Third cousins share great great grandparents. Each step moves one generation further back in the family tree. Even though the connection becomes more distant, the family link is still there. Second cousins may not always know each other personally, but genealogically, they are still part of the same extended family line. What does removed mean? Now we come to the part that confuses many people, and that is when the word removed is used. The word removed simply describes a difference in generations. When two relatives are separated by one generation, they are described as once removed. For example, your parent's first cousin is your first cousin once removed. Why? Because your parent and their cousin are in the same generation, but you are one generation below them. So that cousin relationship has been removed by one generation. The same thing happens when you look at your first cousin's children. Your cousin's child is also your first cousin once removed. In that case, they are one generation younger than you. So the relationship still involves first cousins, but the generations are not the same. That's what removed means. It simply tells us that the two people are not in the same generation. So, why do genealogists care about cousin relationships? Well, understanding cousin relationships becomes especially useful when you begin exploring DNA matches. Let's say you take a DNA test and discover someone who shares enough DNA to be estimated as a second cousin. That information tells you something important. It tells you that you and that person probably share the same great grandparents. That means your connection is likely somewhere in that generation of the family tree. From there, genealogists can begin working backwards and comparing family trees to identify the shared ancestors. This is one of the reasons why cousin relationships are so important. They provide clues, and sometimes those clues lead to exciting discoveries. One of the things I love about genealogy is how it helps us see the larger picture of family history. Our ancestors didn't live their lives in isolation. They had siblings. Those siblings had children. Those children had families of their own. Over time, those branches spread out into many different directions. When we begin to understand cousin relationships, we begin to see the family not just as a straight line of ancestors, but as a living network of connections. And sometimes those distant cousins hold pieces of the story that we might not have. They may have photographs, family stories, letters, or records that help fill in the missing pieces of our shared history. If all of this still feels a little confusing, here is a simple way to remember it. Cousin numbers tell you how far back the shared ancestor is. First cousins share grandparents. Second cousins share great-grandparents. Third cousins share great-great-grandparents. The word removed tells you there is a difference in generations. Once removed means one generation apart. Twice removed means 2 generations apart. When you think of it that way, the system actually becomes very logical. So, the next time you look at your family tree, take a moment to explore the cousins in your extended branches. Look at the siblings of your ancestors. Follow their children. See where those families went. You may discover relatives you didn't know about before. And sometimes those discoveries open the door to new stories and connections. Understanding cousin relationships is one of the first steps toward making sense of the larger family tree. Once you understand how those relationships work, your genealogy research becomes much easier to follow. And as your tree grows, those cousin connections often become some of the most interesting parts of the journey. If you'd like a visual explanation of these relationships, you can also watch my short mini webinar titled Who's Who in Your Family? Understanding Cousins and Family Relationships. You can find that and many other genealogy resources at ancestryseeking.com. Thank you for joining me today on the Time Capsule Podcast. Until next time, remember, every family story matters, and preserving those stories today helps ensure they are not lost tomorrow.